right, we're going to get started here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar, Bridging the Cloud Skills Gap. Our presenters today are Solutions Principal Nick Collier and Senior Specialist Sales Engineer Cooper Lutz, who will teach you how to ramp up your team to make the most out of your Azure cloud integration. I encourage you to explore our webinar platform. We've provided widgets within your portal. They'll be able to help you get a better grasp into our exciting new assets featured in the Ahead Lab, our resource hub. Also, at any time throughout the webinar, feel free to submit your questions into the Q&A widget. We will be addressing all of these questions at the end of Nick and Cooper's presentation. But without further ado, I present to you Nick Collier and Cooper Lutz.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. Thank you everyone for joining today. We really appreciate it. This is definitely a topic that Cooper and I are very, very passionate about. And just some quick intros of our background and why we hopefully think we're qualified to talk to you about the subject. So like Caitlin said, I'm Nick Collier. I'm a solutions principal, and I focus on working with a lot of our Fortune 500 companies here at Ahead. With 20 years of experience in the industry, but the thing I've really been focused on the last, I'd say, 4 months is going around to a lot of enterprises and interviewing them and finding out, are your CCOEs working? What does a CCOE mean to you? And that's what we're obviously going to talk about today and all the training required to get you there. And then joined by Cooper Lutz. You want to give a quick intro on yourself, Cooper?
Yeah, Cooper Lutz. I've spent the last 4 or 5 years focused on Azure and helping customers with various initiatives and projects as they develop their cloud strategy.
Okay, so what are we going to cover today? So this is the layout we've got for you, and definitely, as Caitlin mentioned, we'll definitely take your questions, and we'd love this to be interactive at the end, because I'm sure you have a lot of questions about this topic. One, we'll just talk about why this topic is important. There's a huge, huge gap today. I think every single one of our customers, when we talk to them, is saying, hey, how do I make this transition? What happens to my team that supports, say, VMware, network, and storage today? Should I be hiring externally? Should I be building a new center of excellence? Really, really important stuff, because the decisions you make now are obviously going to be with you for a long time. Not to say you can't change them, and you'll hear about how some of our customers have changed. But I think it's just such an important topic. What we're going to focus on, first of all, is what's required to operate the cloud. So what does a Tiger team, your initial cloud community or center of excellence look like? Hiring of talent. Where does your traditional data center expertise come in, and how do you modify your architecture review board? And then roles and responsibilities. Cooper's going to really go into more detail around some of the high-level roles, and then the people and the specific roles that you get into, and then some of the training and HR requirements. And if there's time, we will try to touch on DevOps and cloud. I don't want to diminish the whole DevOps conversation going on in the industry today, but definitely, something we can try to hit on if there's time at the end as well. So to begin with, we do have a poll here that we want to kind of run to you. I think I just hit submit here. Hopefully it's, push the audience. Hopefully you're getting this poll right now. If you aren't, let us know in the chat. But essentially, do you feel like your company has a good structure for success in the cloud? We just want to ask you that first, and either it's, yes, it's great, maybe it's somewhat okay, or not at all. So definitely want to kind of see what you're kind of seeing before we kind of dive into this. So far, no one says it's great. So we've got another 10 seconds there, I think, of poll time. We've got most people saying somewhat good structure, and definitely a handful saying, not at all, right there. So we'll give it another 5 seconds. Is the poll closed yet? Or we're still going? You can still get your answer in. I know we have some Ahead employees on the line watching too, so I'm curious how they rate us. Okay, doesn't look like any more updates, so we'll kind of move on now. But I think that's typically what we see. No one feels like it's great, but probably started something off. So let's start with this first of all: creating a cloud community of excellence. And why do we call it a community versus a center of excellence? So the term in the industry today is CCOE, Cloud Center of Excellence. And what we found is we've interviewed customers at scale, and I stress at scale because a center of excellence might work when you're very, very small. But at scale, what we're finding, and when customers have said, hey, what do I do? My team's not getting along, that's because the center creates walls, for one, and not everybody has been a part of this uplift in terms of cloud skills. and almost every single one of our customers now is in a hybrid scenario. The ones I would say that have chosen one cloud as a primary, whether that's Azure or AWS, but if you're going down the Azure path today, we would say stick with it, get really skilled in it, don't try to train in multiple clouds at one time. The customers that are training in one cloud first are definitely having more success, and they are challenging the vendors, that's Microsoft, Amazon, Google, on what their CCOE is. And so what does that mean in itself? Well, one, when you look at the team structure, and we'll go through some of the roles here in a moment and what everybody's role is and skills required, but it's not all about just building a dedicated center with a new team. The customers that are more successful are transitioning people. They start off with what we call a tiger team, as you'll learn more about, and then they expand that to become the community. And the community has its own charter. So for one, they need to provide the business and application team with expertise to support digital transformation initiatives. So what does that really mean? Digital transformation is a whole topic in itself, but if you sort of boil it down into 4 bullet points, essentially, you've got transforming your products, empowering your customers, and another one is empowering your employees, and another one is operational efficiency. So if you focus on those 4, and I would say a lot of our customers today primarily are saying, how do I create new products for my customers that are, that are digitally supported, that change the way we do business with our customers? How do I change the way my employees kind of execute day-to-day functions? In order to do that, you often then are dependent on cloud technologies, and we shouldn't lose sight of what that digital transformation initiative is that the CEO or CIO is ultimately pushing down. The next part is culture and alignment of expectations. So at AHEAD, we have a culture of collaborate, innovate, and drive. And all of our customers we work with have their own sort of slogan, mission, culture that you really want to drive towards. But ultimately, this community should all be thinking about security, performance, availability, cost controls, and governance, which you'll learn more about. And if these things are pervasive inside of your community, you will have much, much better results. So what do these roles really look like? Well, in a well-performing team, what we've seen is leadership is made up of a couple of functions. There's typically a product manager now, and this is very similar in this part in some ways to the AWS model and Microsoft model to a degree. They stress the product manager, and they take on leadership functions of the cloud team. They work directly with the business and development teams and generate a backlog, and I think that's key. When we do projects today, we've got traditional projects we do, and we've got agile projects we do, and definitely the ones where we operate in a Scrum, agile type fashion are working really, really well because we have a product manager. We know the priorities. They're stressed throughout. As we move on, we've got our cloud architects. They take on functions related to new architectures and basically for workloads destined for the public cloud. So architecture definitely changes. We see these as solution architects, not necessarily completely bogged down in one technology. They need to be pretty widespread to understand, and they will then feed off the rest of the team. As we move around, you can see we've got a lot of roles here, and we certainly aren't going to have time to go in detail on every single one of these. But application and DevOps teams need to be part of this journey. They're obviously the ones that are a little bit closer to the business. They're trying to respond when we're trying to create a new product. Some of our customers today, I'll give you a good example. One of the energy companies we work with, every time there's a storm in the area and all the power lines go down, one of the applications they're trying to optimize is the outage map application. I'm sure you know if there's a storm in your area, the first thing you do is you go on your phone, you hit your ComEd or wherever you're with, and you try to look at where is the power outage basically in your area and how soon is it going to be resolved. Well, everybody's going on the website at the same time. Great use case for cloud. How do we do a modern application architecture that makes proper use of that? So big one there, and in DevOps, again, we'll try to hit on a little bit later. Security, I know you wanted to kind of hit on this, Cooper, because we've been pretty close at a few customers on this one.
Yeah, security, it's so important to pull in the security team early and often. We've seen so many times where you'll start down this cloud journey, you're starting to build out applications, you're building out your core infrastructure, and now we're putting the business's data and key applications that are part of your business in the cloud. Well, if the security team is not involved in finding those requirements and signing off on all of the different decisions that are being made, it's just going to add additional complexity and so much more risk down the line. So it's important to pull in your security team and make sure that they have a seat at the table in making some of these architectural and design decisions and really helping define what are our core initiatives and what are our core governance controls as we start to build out this cloud environment.
Yeah, and you see we have multi there for security. So, the security typically when we've interviewed the teams and said, okay, well, how do you transition? We're hearing, okay, well, I'm responsible for threat hunting. So I need to look at a different set of technologies in Azure. They will certainly use Azure Security Center. There's a whole bunch of AI now built in the identity tools to automatically lock out accounts and things like that. There's security focused on tooling. If you're doing DevOps, there's security around code check-ins and how we analyze the code with different tools like Selenium and other things out there as well. So definitely a big one to kind of incorporate. The next one, and we are going to get onto the cloud roles and kind of the new stuff, but again, we don't want to leave behind, because I think too many cloud centers of excellence leave behind things like core infrastructure. And networking and storage admins absolutely at scale we are seeing have a big role to play. Storage, there's blob stores you got to manage, there's backups, there's recovery services, Vault in Azure. We should be empowering those members of our teams today to be trained and learn about those areas. Our networking projects, almost every single one of our Azure networking projects, we rely on our traditional network team, as we would call them, but they have made a transition into the public cloud. So go ahead, Cooper.
Yeah, and I think it's really important here to really think about the cloud as it's not separate from your on-premises data center or colo, wherever your core data center is. The cloud is an extension of that data center. It's going to help support some of the initiatives that are being driven on premises. And it's important to bring in your core infrastructure teams, your networking teams, your server teams, and make sure that they have a good understanding of what we're doing in the cloud and how that relates back to the things that they're running on-prem.
Yeah, and then we sort of move into some of the more specialized roles, like if you have a lot of data in your organization, the finance, medical, almost every industry we deal with typically does have a data team, and these are all different depending on what specifically your company's business is and what it makes up. If we then move on, we've got cloud admins and cloud infrastructure engineer. I think too often we see teams built up with just cloud engineer, and they don't take into account cloud administrators. And cloud admins, this could be your NOC, this could be someone that traditionally is responsible for alerts and things. They're now responsible for really kind of what happens when something doesn't perform well in Azure. What happens when I get an alert or ticket? Who do I call? What do I do? Do I call Microsoft, right? What happens if there's a region outage? What does that actually mean for me as a day-to-day cloud admin? And then what else do I have to do as a cloud admin? Now, I've got to keep costs under control. I've got to be looking at reports and dashboards. Those are all key things. And if you don't schedule time for them, they just never happen. And then the last role to kind of cover off here, and again, this isn't to say these are the exact roles you will use, and Cooper will kind of cover off more of the high level and training programs later on, but you definitely have kind of cloud infrastructure engineering, which could straddle the IaaS and PaaS stacks. They're going to focus on all the nuts and bolts and foundational components necessary for those application and DevOps teams architectures to ultimately work, and definitely a lot of training. So moving on.
So the reason we see it being so important to really define what those roles and responsibilities are, and really building out your initial cloud team, especially when you're early on in your journey, is because that team is really going to be responsible for the end-to-end solutions that are being built and developed in the cloud. They're going to be the ones that are defining what are our governance controls, what are our cost models. They're going to be not only defining what our internal standards are, but they're going to be building and have to actually operationalize the environment and support it as we go through and actually start supporting applications in the cloud there.
Yeah, and we use the term team here again a little bit loosely because again the whole community as a whole needs to be thinking about these things. But different teams are going to come together for different projects that you'll kind of see. But we all need to be thinking about these things. While we're talking there, we did have a question come in just around what about the DBA team? It's okay, we can keep it here. What about the DBA team? Jump in there. So we had data teams, yes. I'll just hit on that a little bit more. And we had, so it's definitely like the SQL team, good example in Azure. We see them taking a lot of training around all the new SQL services. There's Azure SQL, there's Azure SQL managed instances. There's SQL IaaS, where it's actually automated patching and backup for you in an IaaS type configuration, so you still get all the control of a traditional VM. And then there's do-it-yourself SQL.
And this is one that we really see as being, similar to application and DevOps teams. Data teams are really the ones that are driving a lot of the adoption of cloud. Things like you see all of the core applications that Nick kind of mentioned there, like Azure, Azure's out-of-the-box capabilities, but then there's things like Hadoop and Snowflake, all these different data solutions that are coming up that a lot of your DBAs or analytics teams are going to start asking for. So we see them really as being one of the core teams that are part of that initial cloud community of excellence.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question there. Again, we'll jump on some of the training later on. But then let's just talk about the approach to skills, right? So you've got your existing team, you've got your existing business model, we've got predefined roles and responsibilities, we've got process that we're just so used to today. And ultimately, what we really want to do is start small and expand. So think big, but start small. And so typically you'll create a blueprint kind of describing your tiger team. And again, that tiger team is kind of the core team that will work with maybe the first application you bring on board. Now, again, we stress is don't try to make that a separate team from the organization. That's probably people from existing groups that come together to fulfill a function, which you'll sort of see more about. But that team is going to expand and kind of help form this community. A lot of show and tell early on. What we've heard time and time again from enterprises where they've built an isolated silo. I mean, everybody knows the silo mentality today. People don't like it. Sometimes they get envious. Sometimes they all the cool people are on this team, or no, I'm not. I'm not on the cutting edge. Like, is my job in jeopardy? You really want to just squash that very, very early. And I think the training programs, as Cooper talks about the transitions from what your current roles are, if everybody is training and learning these new skills, then they're more ready to expand and support your different projects. And so we also stress looking to retrain. The job market is absolutely insane right now for Azure engineers, as anybody on this call can probably attest to. So if nothing else, train and up your worth in the industry. But really, I think this is on every enterprise now to work on transition plans and training programs to help people, basically take these roles. Hiring talent is extremely, extremely difficult right now. It's not to say you can't do it. There's certainly Azure people out there, but it's going to be a lot easier in our experience now to actually just start a program and get everybody involved, and you'll have a more enjoyable experience as well for your company. Now, if we look at project team examples, if we look at like a 3-tier stack, an IoT application, or a simple app service with a standard security framework. These are not meant to be exactly spot on in this diagram. The point here is to show you that different projects are going to require different teams. And the reason we show this is there was sort of a methodology running around for a while where they call it two-pizza team, which is a good concept. Essentially keep your teams quite small, and Amazon kind of coined it, and we do like it to some extent. But what we don't like is that the idea, a lot of people took that idea and said, okay, every time I need a new project, I'm going to stamp out another team, and they're going to work on so many projects at any one time. Well, in reality, it just didn't scale well in the enterprise and was maybe just misinterpreted a little bit. And so the real idea here is that you scale for what you need. So if you look at a project, I want to start a project, who do I need? Well, you're going to have some long-term project members, like your applications, your DevOps teams are going to really focus. Maybe they decide to continue to support. Maybe they don't. We'll talk about some of the operations models in a little bit. You're probably going to have a lead architect on that project, but they're going to need subject matter experts as needed for different pieces of the project in itself. So it could be from cloud infrastructure engineering, somebody to help with the network and storage compute decisions going on in Azure. Obviously, they're going to need help from security. And certainly if there's some data involved, most projects have some sort of database requirement, or if it's more of an advanced data use case, data lake type stuff, you might need someone from that team. So ultimately, this team comes together. You're going to have some short-term members, which are subject matter experts, that are going to kind of float between your projects, and then you're going to have long-term project members that really are dedicated to the project for a long time, and this allows you to scale. So what you decide is, well, who do I need in the various roles to really get things off the ground? And so let's as we shift into training now, the one question we got to ask as we do that is, are you able to find enough time to train on cloud? I think I have to push the poll. Let me see, is the poll? It's going? Okay, the poll is going. So we'll get the live results here. But essentially, the answer one is, I never stop training, even in the evenings, but it's my choice. So if you just passionately love Azure and you want to keep going all the time, that's kind of choice one. Number two, my company provides adequate time for me to train. And number three, there's simply just not enough time in the day. So hopefully those options will provoke some thought there. So far, 100% of users are saying there's just not enough time in the day, and that's it's fairly. I'm surprised there weren't a few more in the others, but that's where I expected most of it to be. Personally, we still going with the poll.
Yeah, you can actually update it.
It's up there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's sticking at 100%. Okay, That's pretty good. Okay, so I think that's typical, and I think we can get into a whole conversation around work-life balance and prioritization. But I totally echo everybody that's selected that, because I don't have enough time to keep up with all the training I need to do. Sometimes we even try to do multi-cloud, and the fact that everybody's saying there's just not enough time in the day, I'd also ask yourself, well, if your company added another cloud provider into the mix, and you still got VMware potentially on premises to support, how would that even work for you? And again, it just goes back and I think reinforces why we caution so much. Taking on a cloud provider is a lot of training, a lot of requirement, and requires a lot of investment in your people. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Kupi to really kind of talk about roles and kind of the training there.
Yeah, and something that we see so often, just kind of as I get into, what these different roles and responsibilities look like. One thing that we see time and time again is this concept of, when we go to the cloud, we're going to have this traditional IaaS team, which is going to be kind of your core networking and server team, and then we're going to have this PaaS team, which is your data and application people. But when we get into that model, now we have two completely separate teams that are functioning within the same environment, serving completely separate services and not really talking and interacting with one another. So we really want to dispel kind of that concept of splitting up your teams between IaaS and focusing, them on being really your core infrastructure teams, and the PaaS model where you have your traditional, application and data teams. We want to really get into this model where we're blending and everybody's kind of doing a little bit of everything. And one thing that I see, so often is you start to get into these really different, really difficult concepts with things like networking. How does networking function within these PaaS environments? Are we meeting the company's internal expectations for our core networking, monitoring, or firewall rules as we shift into these different PaaS services? So you start to see your network engineers or network architects, they're starting to learn more and more about PaaS services, how these different services function, and how we deliver and monitor these different capabilities. And then your application teams are now going to be in a similar situation where now they have to be thinking about these things. They have to understand how the network traffic is flowing between their different services, make sure that we're capturing all that information that's necessary. And you'll see here we have split up a number of different roles, but depending on your team size, the names in these boxes might be maybe everybody has their name in each of these boxes and we're all responsible, or maybe we're crossing different capabilities. But really the goal here is to start blending those lines and creating grayer lines where we're not defining each team is only responsible for one component or one service within the cloud.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of reiterate that a little bit differently as well, is you kind of got these names. They might be in multiple areas. So cloud IaaS, cloud PaaS, cloud networking. You need to define the roles that make sense for your business and the projects that you're likely to have. But then, ultimately align people, and then that will help you align with the training that's ultimately required. So you see we've got like PaaS, app serverless, containers, IaaS engineer. I would say a lot of our infrastructure engineers today kind of initially move into kind of the IaaS world. They get used to like network and storage VMs. They're very comfortable there because if you were on premises, you probably used a virtual distributed switch in VMware. Now you need to learn VNets. Great, you've kind of learned and you've transitioned as kind of that cloud entry-level engineer then. As you move up, and I'd say this is true for all of our Azure engineers and architects that are head two, apps and infrastructure for us kind of go together. And when we say apps, it's not to say we're developers. I want to kind of stress that. But we are able to do application architecture around containers, Kubernetes, Azure App Services. We need to learn those things in addition to thinking, hey, this goes on a VM, and then I hand it over. The old ways, like I build my VM, I give it to the app team, they install their software. Well, I have to work hand in hand with the app team to really kind of help them scale. But yeah, these roles, the high-level roles that we're talking about right now, and you'll kind of hear the deeper ones that Cooper's going to go into, in fact, actual titles in a minute that you might give to teams. But these roles are more like, what do I need to even meet my business demands? And then who have I got that can fill them? And then,
so once we start kind of defining what those roles look like, we've got a few examples here, just what we traditionally see between these different roles. Like an Azure architect in particular, they're really going to be the one that's responsible for a lot of the leadership and defining a lot of the capabilities and requirements for the cloud environment. So they're going to have a lot of different responsibilities. These people a lot of times are going to come from, your data center backgrounds where you're running VMware, or they're Windows systems administrators, Linux administrators, networking administrators. The Azure architect is somebody who's really seen a lot of the different components within your environment, and somebody who has a lot of the knowledge of the apps, the infrastructure, and the data side. And you'll see we really like the new Microsoft mentality of building out the roles-based certifications training. So your Azure architect is really going to be responsible for looking at the AZ300, AZ301, and we really like the way that those align with the different responsibilities and capabilities that you're building out in your team. AWS does very similar, has the defined roles based on the certifications. Another example, your Azure administrators, these are the people who are really going to be hands-on with the day-to-day operations and troubleshooting of the environment. A lot of times, they're going to come from similarly that Windows administrator background. Maybe they come from a NOC where they're really hands-on and monitoring the environment and are responsible for the uptime of the environment.
Yeah, Cooper, you get asked that question a lot. Like, what roles, have you seen really transition into that? Because I know you've kind of worked with a lot of customers to actually transition. Is it typically always your Windows admin, or have you seen it from others as well?
No, it's not a hard and fast rule. That's really the interesting thing about it is, your Azure administrator may come from an application background where they're a developer, but it's really, for the most part, we see that being, your Windows administrators or your Linux administrators. A lot of the, your Hyper-V or VMware administrators, they're the ones that are really going to have a lot of the skills that can easily translate to how we would operate and administer the cloud environment as well.
Yeah, just a point, the training recommended there for the administrator is now AZ103. Apologies, we have to update the slide here. Microsoft consolidated the 100-101 into a single certification. But again, that AZ103 training really matches the role of Azure admin. So this is definitely where we advise people to start getting into cloud. And there's actually AZ900 as well now if you just want absolute basics, but that's more aimed at like salespeople and directors and higher level. But the Azure admins should start at kind of AZ103.
So won't hit all of these, but another one that I did want to hit on is that's really important, I think, on day one is your identity management administrator. So somebody who's really responsible for your identity on premises. That's something that is really going to be important as we move to the cloud with all of the different identity services and capabilities that we're building out in Azure. A lot of the times, these are going to be your Active Directory administrators or engineers. maybe they also have, a Windows administrator background, but they're going to be responsible for the identity flow and making sure that we have built out, all the different roles and responsibilities and assign the appropriate permissions in Azure. And that's something that we see as being extremely important day one.
Yeah, I wouldn't diminish how much time you're going to spend on identity. And what's really interesting is the way Microsoft has kind of split out, their global admins and identity layer. And then you've got kind of your data layer and everything going on in your Azure subscription. So you can have subscription admins that are kind of responsible for Azure, like role-based access and certain areas in there and resources and services they provision and what they can do in Azure. And then you've got global admins that are ultimately responsible for Azure AD as a whole. And that's obviously kind of spanned Office 365 as well. So once you get your head around it, that you've got kind of your AD roles and then you've got your Azure roles, it becomes very, very clear. So definitely read up on just Azure RBAC and Azure AD, and I think it becomes clear very quickly. But with that, if we jump ahead to how do we, slide's a little blurry on the presentation here, but hopefully you can see it okay. What we typically do then is we sort of take, I'm actually going to jump one more slide ahead, we have the sort of sub-skills that we take first of all. So we have these major categories and then sub-skills. So CDN is your content delivery network, operations and monitoring, one of the sub-skills is monitoring and alerting on Azure resources. What is the training curriculum that it applies to, and then what are the details? What am I expecting my admins to know or architects to know? So then in the checkboxes that we have, so when we work with customers ahead, we take the curriculums and we divide up and say, okay, well, what are the things I'm expected to do day to day? Well, I need to monitor for unused resources. I need to be able to create action groups in Azure Monitor. What do those mean? How do I create and test alerts? And once I've got those, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, it all sort of feeds up into the sheet. So we've got our sub-skills required and then the roles that are applicable. So one of our skills might be like managing Azure subscriptions. Who needs to worry about that? Our Azure admins, our Azure engineers. And then you kind of, have all your different people along the top. We just threw some names in here as an example. I'm not trying to say that I'm the most proficient in everything here on the screen. But essentially, you kind of have everybody not only decide how well they rate. So if they say they can do all those things, they would be, say, a 4. If they can only do 25% of those things, they'd be a 1. That's essentially how it works. But then they can gauge their interest from 0 to 1. And we do it that way. It's like we're not going to get into that, well, how interested are you? Or are you really interested? It's more just, are you interested or not in these various things? Because if we can start to align, what people want to do as well with our demand, and you can't see it in the spreadsheet, but we also have like an overall score in each area that we work with enterprises on, then you can sort of rate in each area how proficient you are in your organization. And then again, those categories at the top there are aligned to those roles Cooper was mentioning, which are, these are the roles I need to meet my application demand. Do I even have the people? And then if I don't have the people, do I have anybody even interested in it? And then I kind of get my overall score. And that's kind of how we approach the skills gap as a whole. Then if you look at it, each team member should have their own battle card. This is something you work with HR on, and you say, okay, we really need to bridge the skills gap. We really need people to be trained every quarter or every half year, twice a year basically. You kind of revisit this and you review everybody's battle card. What's their involvement in the community? That could be internal at your company. That could be external as well. What's their title? What's their role? What are their specialties? And then what are their achievements last quarter, and what are they kind of working on this quarter? It seems like common sense, but something just a lot of managers need to just sit down, meet with their employees, and actually get down and work with. And then if we kind of shift to some of the operations roles for a second, just backtracking back out of skills, we also need to decide, how are we going to operate in the cloud as well? Again, I've got these teams here, and do I want to keep stamping these out so I don't deal with operations, the team that creates it, maintains it, or do I continue to scale? We are seeing a mixture in very, very large enterprises where some groups do create, but for the most part, we think there's still a huge benefit in operations. It scales better, your NOC adapts, everything adapts, you just revamp it and kind of go from there. You want to hit this one? I think it's a very important point.
Yeah, and I think what we also see a lot of is, as you're starting down this journey, and especially or depending on the velocity that you're moving in, we see time and time again where you end up relying so heavily on, Amazon or Microsoft or Google, where you're really expecting kind of them to really drive your strategy and really support your environment. And this is really where this kind of, this whole bridging the skills gap thing comes from, is this idea that we really need to develop our teams internally, and maybe you're going to rely on a head to help you with setting the strategy and guiding you through your journey. And your vendor's still going to be involved, and Microsoft is going to be there to help and support you. But really, we want to pull it together and be able to have the team or your team drive the initiatives, and really just rely on vendors and partners to help you along that journey.
Yeah, just don't let your vendor, or even us for that matter, become your CCOE. We need to empower you. Is the call there. Then a couple of other things to quickly hit on here. Architecture review board, still relevant, absolutely, still should review architectures, but the goal here should shift towards driving the projects forward. Not to say that a lot of ARBs don't, but the goal, again, sometimes they can be seen as a gatekeeper. The architecture review board, the people on it need to understand, they need to be trained to actually help with these projects. So definitely some alterations there to your ARB. But also, if you take everything we said and summarize into these three categories now, we've got our Tiger team and community that's starting out. They're training, they're sharing knowledge, you're building a team that makes sense for the roles to meet your business demands. That's kind of step one in this. Very quickly, though, you'll need to make sure you have step two, cost optimization and security in place. And if you don't, KTLO, for anyone that doesn't know, that's keeping the lights on. There's activities we need to do to just make sure everything runs smoothly. Our goal here is to have a well-oiled machine. But you can see how we've got in bold scheduled. Weekly, monthly checks. It's great. We work with customers all the time. We present them dashboards and we help look at them and get people moving with them. And we do that because so many people have out of control spend in the public cloud. It's not to say the public cloud's a bad place to go. It's not. It can be very cost effective if used very well and for the right reasons. But we don't want out of control spend. We've seen Joe's Server 5 and a bunch of servers with random Star Wars names that nobody knows about, right? Like, whose are they? What are they doing? Do we even know? This is a security risk. But I can't stress enough that the admin role, typically some admins fall into this category as one of their responsibilities, and they need to schedule time to do those checks. And then that data also gets fed into the architecture review board for every project that the Tiger team and community is working on. So all these areas kind of have a synergy. When things are going really well, these three areas are working really, really well together. A couple of things that we also need to kind of talk through, though. Cooper mentioned all the education, the training. You're a VMware admin. You want to transition. Well, what's my journey? Is it training, more training, culture of training? Everybody kind of hit the poll and said not enough time in a day. Well, burnout is a real thing. Eric Shanks at Ahead, he's written so many articles about burnout, which we're very thankful for. It seems like it's a heavily discussed topic, and sometimes we're our own worst enemy, right? Because we're sort of working on the stuff, we want to be really good at it, but we need to make training fun, but not a 24-hour expectation. The first thing I would say on this that you can do to really, really be effective is just have focused time. Even if it's saying every single person once a week for an hour watches the Azure, channel 9 on Friday. Let's start with that. Everybody that's going to be part of this cloud community kind of does that. And then at the same time, maybe they have an hour after to get together and just discuss what was mentioned, discuss some projects, getting together. Those 2 hours of time will pay off in dividends later on if you can just commit to it and make it maybe it's 2 o'clock on a Friday. I forget when the channel 9 is now, but nobody books over that time. You sort of have a no meeting hold on that time. Another thing which Cooper's worked a lot on with our customers are Sandbox templates.
Yeah, and I think this is another one I'm very passionate about, because I think it makes training fun, and it makes the learning, hands-on experience that we can actually test things out. And that's, one of the benefits of Azure is we have the ability to quickly build things out, test them, completely destroy them, and we have very little impact on the environment. So this is one that we've worked a number of times on with our customers, where we're building out, kind of these isolated environments where you can go out, hand everybody over some keys to the kingdom, and they can build and develop and learn. And at the same time, you're not going to sit there and spend thousands and thousands of dollars. It can be regulated so that you're spending very little money, but everybody is getting that hands-on experience and actually getting to learn and enjoy some of these new capabilities and services.
Yeah, and so as we come to the end of our presentation, and we'll take some questions. I want to stress a couple of things. One, if you're looking to get into Azure today, AZ-103. If you're trying to become an architect, it's the AZ-300, 301. So I think the training, just getting started with training while worrying about burnout and providing a good balance for yourself is probably the best way to get started. And then if you're one of the leadership team for your company attending this call, definitely, hopefully we've shared some good thoughts on just, how you can structure your teams and get everybody as part of this community. Again, it's less about the silo they belong to and more about the community as a whole and how we get everybody together to kind of march forward. And that's just what we've seen after interviewing, all these customers, and some have done it well, some have ripped out their centers and are changing the way they do it. But the number one difference we know between a successful customer and a non-successful customer is the amount of focus they put on training and making sure people have the time to get that training done. So some call to actions that we have, if you're interested, certainly we love to help more. So briefings with the head. Obviously, a lot of people on this call today are our customers. But even if you're not working with us, build your own plan. We stress to kind of take what we've suggested here and tailor it to yourself, what your business needs. Identify the people that want to be the start. I mean, you want people that are passionate about it and get them going and enable them to get trained and grow their career. So with that, we will turn it over to some questions. If you have them, pop them in the little widget that you'll have on screen. I think we've got one more so far that we're waiting on, right? So, there we go. Yeah.
How does a head work with Zerto when going to the cloud?
You do migrations, so you want to talk through that?
Yes. So migrations in particular, your lift and shift where you're moving your on-premises environment to Azure. We are partnered with Zerto. We've done a number of engagements where we're taking Zerto and we love their platform, honestly, and really taking your on-premises environment and migrating it to Azure. That's something we see time and time again. But it's really Zerto. They've built a really good platform for your traditional kind of lift and shift, as well as DR in the cloud.
Yeah, as you can tell, Cooper's pretty passionate about migrations. He's done a lot of those, so he's the guy to hit up if you got questions. We've got another question. Yeah, who is responsible for making a company's training decisions? So this is a really interesting one, and I've seen two major methods happening lately. One is where you do get HR involved with, say, and depends how your company's structured, from directors and VPs and CIOs, how big you are, but your leadership team in IT should work with HR. And then map out the training they need. That's very effective because you can make it part of the review. The other thing I'll just say is I was talking to another customer the other week, and often one of the biggest problems with how people get promoted in IT is they have to go to management to kind of move up. And so they were talking a lot about how they've changed with HR. There's brackets from an admin to an engineer to a principal engineer, and a principal, solutions principal can make as much as a senior director in that case. So you've got two tracks, and people aren't always jumping towards management, which I think is a really, really interesting thing. I mean, something frankly everybody's talking about in our customers today is like, hey, the only way to progress is through leadership. But who's responsible? I think the decisions to make are between the line managers and their team in terms of what people want to do. Obviously, at a more senior level, you need to have a plan for your company, and then if you can integrate it into your HR, highly recommend it because you can make a true program and ensure pay scales and things. People are rewarded for their efforts as well. So I think another question here: how can education system, middle school, high school, community college, universities help prepare the future workforce for the cloud? So I'm just going to go on and say this is something I'm hugely passionate about, having started a side training courses myself. I think there's two things. I think one, integrating into the curriculum real-world cloud skills. Internships obviously help as well, but if we want to go back down to kind of middle school and high school for a minute, I think part of it is an emphasis today on computer science degrees and programming. Like you see it everywhere you go, kids who code, all these kind of things, and that's really, really important. But not everybody in these roles needs to be a developer. And so we don't have enough of a program, I would say today, around infrastructure, as a whole, and I think that could be introduced earlier on. We sort of lost some of the focus on business information systems, which were a lot of prevalent degrees a while back, and I think needs to be more focus on that because I think tying into the business is important, and then computer science obviously is still important. Now, I personally have a background in computer science and information systems. That's how I kind of accelerated myself when I got out of college. I'm using the term college loosely. It's high school in the US, so sixth form college in the UK, and then we go off to university. I think there's a number. I would definitely love to talk to you more. Feel free to reach out to me. Happy to discuss more on that. Got a lot of thoughts on that. Probably far too many for the final 5 minutes we've got on the call here. A couple of questions. Yeah. Do you find most customers are setting up a new team to focus on cloud?
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to really depending on, I think, how much time you're really able to carve out for your team. Where we've seen a lot of success is setting up that new team, peeling people off of their day-to-day operations, or maybe they're on other projects, but taking that team and building it out. That's that tiger team, where they can solely focus on developing that initial day one cloud environment. So they're really kind of a new team, but pulling from your existing resources.
And just on that point of do they start the new team? I think again, I would stress the focus on it becoming a community. So you definitely have to start with a tiger team, as we like to call it. We don't like to call it cloud center anymore. That's what we're really pushing from ahead. That's just a big thing. And we just want everybody to start thinking about training and the roles you need to support your organization. That's how I would really just approach that. I do think a lot of customers, I would almost say like 67-70% have started out with the CCOE Center of Excellence concept, but are shifting now at scale. And that's where we've sort of stepped in really when we sort of went in and kind of interviewed a lot of our customers and said, well, is it working? Is it not working? That's been something that's important. So I would just stress at scale you need a community. So that's really important. There was a question on how do I reach out to you. I think, Caitlin, you've got taken care of that one. What is your response stance when you hear cloud is taking over our jobs? It's not.
I haven't seen, this is one that I really have not seen a single instance yet where, a team has dropped 50% of the workforce because we're moving to the cloud, especially this early in the stage. There's a lot of new responsibilities and people are almost going to be spread thin. You may be hiring more, but not once have I seen a case where, moving to the cloud has really, resulted in jobs being lost.
Yeah, and I would just add on that. It doesn't mean it's not going to be painful, though. I think in ahead, I like to be very honest with ourselves here. I've been part of building out some of our practices here. We've had, we're very fortunate that, we have a lot of very talented engineers, but, on our Azure side here today, which we're talking about. And, but it isn't without its failures that we've had. We haven't had everybody want to make that transition. But I can tell you now, when I look at some of the traditional roles, of like the network team here is so cloud aware. The storage team and ahead is so cloud aware. And I don't think that's just because we're in consulting. I think that's because the people that have been passionate about it have been given the opportunity to get trained in it. And our senior leadership team, our CTO, has set the direction. So I think if we were a traditional, data center company, 10 years ago is where we started out as, and now we're definitely seen as a cloud leader. And I think that's because, A, we made that transition. We brought people along that want to move, and we've had new external talent join as well with new, fresh ideas. But I think that's really, really important. But yeah, I don't think it's taken over jobs. I think it's made your job harder, fortunately. It goes back to training more and more and more, and there's not enough time in a day. So I think there's this like the sweet balance we've all got to come to is where we need to get to at the end of the day. And that's all our questions, it looks like. And so we're going to end off here with a thank you slide. So do you want to end us off, Caitlin, or shall we?
Yeah, I can end us off. So thank you so much for joining today. We really appreciate all the time you spent out of your day to listen to Nick and Cooper and get some insight as to how to bridge your cloud skills gap. If you have any additional questions or want to reach out to either Cooper or Nick, in the speaker bio is their Twitter, LinkedIn, and emails, so feel free to reach out to them with any questions. As well as at the end of this webinar, our Azure Governance Framework will pop up for you to take a look at, and be on the lookout for maybe a future webinar on the AWS portion. But we really appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for dialing in. Have a great day.
Yep. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.